All right, so welcome back, everyone, for our third day of our summer school on Brazilian studies. I would like to thank you all for being with us once again and for taking part in this project. And today we're going to have a session on Brazilian geology by Professor Tiago Novo. I would like to thank Professor Tiago for being with us. It's such an honor to have you here with us. Professor Tiago is an associate professor at the Department of Geology of UFMG, and he's also the vice director of the Institute of Geosciences at UFMG. So welcome, Professor Tiago, and now the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. And hello, everyone. Good morning. Well, good morning for Brazil and America. Good afternoon, Africa, Europe. Good night for Asia, Australia. So my name is Tiago Novo. I am a geologist, a researcher, and a professor here in UFMG. And we're going to talk a little bit today about Brazilian geology. And so what we're going to actually see here, I'm going to talk about the Brazilian geology, of course, and also a little bit about Brazilian geography. About these concepts, what is the difference, geology, geography? Roughly speaking, the only difference is because the geography, we have the so-called human geography and the physical geography. In one hand, the human geography is directly related to action of humans with the space. So it embraces society, culture, race, politics, but you're gonna see a lot of good talks about the subjects with Eloisa, Corinne, Bruno, Deborah, and so on. And here we're gonna talk about the physical geography and its link to geology. So we're gonna see a little bit how Earth dynamics shaped the Brazilian climate, the relief, the topography, the vegetation, and the hydrography. So I divide this presentation. This is the index. I put an introduction, a brief introduction. Then I'm gonna talk a little bit about demography, Brazilian GDP, and health. And then I will start to shape Brazil. We're going to start to see what forces really shape the topography, the hydrography, the climate, and so on. And then we're going to check Brazil from north to south, step by step. So let me just, I'm going to put this here, okay, so we can see the full screen. And well, this presentation is going to be available on YouTube later. So if you want to check any part that you find interesting, you can go, like, there is a small icon here. You can check like introduction, and this is gonna be for every part, demography, GDP, shaping Brazil, and so on. So you can fast forward for any part that you find interesting. So let's start with introduction. Let's understand how we form these amazing beach from Brazil. This one is paradise on earth here. I'm going to talk a little bit about this place later. And not only the beaches, but always also the mountains, which forces shapes these outstanding waterfalls that we have here. This one is pretty close to FMG, it's like a 2 hours drive. I'm going to talk a little bit about this one too. This one in South Brazil, and about the rivers, the hydrography, how big they actually are, and how they got these different sizes, formats, and shapes, and of course the mountains. They are so beautiful. There are a lot of mountains in Brazil. There are a lot of lowlands in Brazil too, but there are a lot of mountains. So let's understand how Earth dynamics shaped this outstanding landscape. So here, the nature in Brazil is really, really diverse. So let's start with the basics, okay? Here is Brazil. we are in South America. Brazil is the biggest country in South America. I'm talking about the area. And actually, Brazil is pretty big. Most of people have no idea how big Brazil actually is. Of course, this is like Japan. I think it's in scale, but the other things is just a joke. But when you see Brazil is one of the 6 countries of the world that have more than 5 million square kilometers in area. We have Brazil, US, Canada, Russia, China, and Australia. So it's only 6, and Brazil is in the top 5. You know, Russia is really big. Then Canada, China, and US almost the same size, and Brazil is 8.5 million square kilometers. It's pretty big. It's literally, here we have South America. Brazil is literally a country with continental dimensions. This one is in scale. You can fit the whole Europe in the area of Brazil. Here we have Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, and so on. And one thing that I find interesting too, we can compare the size of Brazil with Pluto. It used to be a planet. It's not a planet. There is some classifications, but you can fit the size of Pluto here. It's 2,000 kilometers. Brazil, from south to the extremely north, is 4,000 kilometers. So let's understand a little bit more about the geology and geography of Brazil. So if you check here now, until now we are in introduction, we start the demography. So if you want to fast forward later, feel free. About the demography, I'm just going to talk a little bit about demography because you're going to have a good talk in July 12 with Corina. But Brazilian population is around 200 million people. And they are distributed in a very heterogeneous way across Brazil. If you check the population, more than 200 million people in 8.5 million square kilometer, you have around 24 inhabitants per square kilometer. But if you check the north, you have like 4 inhabitants per square kilometers. This is where we have the Amazon forest and the Amazon River. There are not a lot of towns here. In the center west, also, here is a lot of soy plantation, not a lot of big cities. There is one or another. We have here the Brazilian capital. And when you go to the coast, mainly in the southeast and the south, we have more density. Here in the southeast is the more populated area, is around 86 inhabitants per square kilometers. Minas Gerais is the country, is the state or province where UFMG is. Here in Belo Horizonte, it's a big city. Belo Horizonte is around 2 million inhabitants, and well, it's more than 7,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. So a large city here. About the population race, well, you're gonna see with Cristiano tomorrow, and then culture with Heloisa. You already saw a little bit of history. This is a painting very famous from Tarsila Amaral. We can see we have a lot of races here in Brazil. It's a multiracial country. We have more brown and indigenous people, usually in the north. This is the last time we see. UFMG is around here. You see we have these 2 words. This part in red is where we have more brown and indigenous people, and here in blue we have a little bit more white people. You see it's very heterogeneous, but well, this is more about the human geography, and you're gonna see in politics also with Bruno Ribeiro in July 15, if I'm correct. So about GDP and health, The pandemic impact, Brazil was an epicenter in South America. Most cases in the world, a lot of cases in Brazil, US, and India, it really affects the whole world. This data is from the World Health Organization. I was hoping we could be like presential today, but unfortunately we can't yet. Good news, the Brazilian population is almost already vaccinated, 86, 87%. So FMG is developing a vaccine, it's very good, but Brazilian health, just a little bit about human geography. Let's start the GDP because this connects already with geology and physical geography. You're gonna see, of course, you're gonna see Brazilian economy, but about the GDP, the gross domestic product, we have a lot of cattle, soy, and oil, and of course, iron and gold. Brazil GDP depends a lot of these things. So let's see part to part where each one of these came from Brazil. And well, the mineral resources, it's very interesting because it controls not only the Brazilian GDP, it also controls its occupation. When Brazil was a colony in Portugal, the occupation was guided by the gold. Well, it starts in the coast. Here is a rough map from Brazil. It starts in the coast, then in the northeast, then it goes to the southeast and came all the way to Minas Gerais. Here in Minas Gerais, we have a lot of gold and it shapes the occupation of Brazil. It's very interesting how a mineral resource can shape land occupation. So let's understand now, let's shape Brazil. This is the main topic of this talk. Let's shape Brazilian landscapes. Let's understand which forces are responsible for these amazing landscapes that we have here in Brazil. And to understand the landscape, we have to understand the definition. What is a landscape? And there is this definition that I like a lot, that when we look at a landscape, what defines the landscape, it's not only the present moment, but it's accumulation of different times, because we have not only the geological times, there is millions and billions of years, but we also have the historical time, the social construction that humanity has made that reflects its interest, which are accumulating in the landscape, revealing the diverse timing process. This is very nice because we have not only the geological time scale. I'm going to talk a little bit just to be clear what we are talking about when we say geological time. We also have historical time. There are around centuries, and also the biological time, the social interaction. It's very nice, and this what defines the landscapes. And here in Brazil, it's very diverse because in one hand, we have these huge developed economic centers like in São Paulo, but also sometimes the social interaction, it merges with the landscape. This one is Ouro Preto. It's a historical city from colonial times, and it's like 1 hour trip from FMG. It's very nice to go there. And you can see like the cities merging to the landscape, to the mountains, like Ouro Preto, like in Rio de Janeiro. It's amazing. So this is what we're going to understand. What forces are responsible, the society and the culture you're going to see in other places. But now let's understand the edification of Brazilian landscapes. A little bit about geological time, just to understand the scale. This is very nice. This is, well, it's the cosmic calendar. It's idealized. It was idealized by Carl Sagan. And here we put the history of the whole universe in a calendar, in 1 year. So in this calendar, 1 month is around 1 billion years. 1 day is around 37 to 38 million years. 1 second is more than 4 centuries. So the first human beings that began on Earth, they just arrived in the night of December 31, around 11:55, like almost midnight. And everyone you know, every history ever written about wars and dictators, everything that you ever listen about the society happens in the last 15 seconds of this calendar. So this is to get a proportion of time, of geological time. We're going to talk now about millions and billions of years. You know, one life around 100 years is like the blink of an eye. It's like 0.1 or 0.2 seconds. So this is basic to understand what I'm going to talk next. Because now we're going to understand the Earth as we know. Here is the world map, and we are back in on time, 10 million years, 20 million years, and you can see the continents. It is before the Atlantic opening. We are gonna glue together Brazil and Africa, because the Earth, as we know today, is the result of several geological events in nearly 5 billion years of its existence. So, of course, the universe is like 13 billions old, unless this, but the Earth, as we know, is around 4.5 billion years old. And, well, Brazil, particularly Brazil, it's around here in South America, of course, there are two main tectonic events that were very important for Brazilian landscape configuration. The first one happened 400 to 500 million years ago, 400 to 500 million years, sorry. Several continental nucleus, they just collide, they close small oceans and generate a lot of mountain ranges that we can still see today. The lineation, the orientation of these mountain ranges that were generated around 4 to 5 million years ago. This event gave rise to the big continents, the first one, the Gondwana supercontinents, and later to the famous Pangaea supercontinents. And they stuck together until around 100 to 50 million years ago. That's when the Atlantic started to open. When the Atlantic started to open, it's the second great event that shaped Brazilian landscapes. And this separates continental land masses and form the Brazil that we know today. You know, here we still are back in on time. So I'm gonna just back here, around 400 million years, Brazil was around here in the poles. And now we're gonna back and we're gonna check. Here we have the Pangaea. All the lands are together, they were together, and around 180, 150 million years, you're gonna see that the Atlantic starts to open. It starts to open in the north. You can see North America is already separated from Europe and Africa. And when we go, we can see the Atlantic opening. And so we have the first event with the agglutination and the second event with the Pangaea breakup, where South America go one side, Africa go another side. So we have the first event, the agglutination, the second one, the breakup. Okay, now we have Brazil here. I'm gonna show which continents collide during the Pangaea, the Gondwana agglutination. This is Brazil. This thing in blue here, this was a continent at the time, and it was surrounded by ocean. And the first time we have a lot of collisions, there are almost synchronous collisions, and this shaped a lot of Brazilian landscape. You know, at this time, Brazil probably looked a lot like what we have in the Himalaya today. Because when you collide two continents, you have an orogenic event. The orogenesis is the formation of mountains. So probably Brazil around 350 million years ago, 350 million years ago, looks a lot like Himalaya. And this is the world map at this time. We have Brazil around here. Here is Africa, Australia, India, and all the other continents in the north was stuck together here. And this event is very nice. It's happened 400 million years ago, and we can still see the mountains aligned because of this. So this is our Himalaya now. You know, we have not very big mountains. The highest one is around 3,000 meters. This is very nice one, and you can see the lineation. You can see they are organized exactly where the continent has collided. It's very nice place to go. This is a little bit far from FMG. It's like a 6 hours drive, but it's very nice to see the sunrise here in this mountain. It's called Pico da Bandeira. So after some 200 million years, we have the Gondwana breakup. So America go one way, Africa go another. They are breaking up. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the time pass. So we have the start from the separation, and it's very important because create the Brazilian coastline. And Brazilian coastline has more than 7,000 kilometers of amazing beaches, amazing landscapes. And also, what influence in our GDP, we create the gas and oil deposits. I'm gonna talk a little bit about it later. So Brazil coastline from south to north in Brazil, we have 4,000 kilometers. But when you have the coastline, you go always in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, and you have 7,000 kilometers of coastline. Well, UFMG is in Minas Gerais. Here in Minas Gerais, we are not in any part of the ocean. We don't have beaches here. We have amazing waterfalls, but we can go to Rio de Janeiro, Espírito Santo, São Paulo, or the amazing place that is the Northeast is very nice. So this event, when it starts to open, it's also shaped the Brazilian lowlands. So we start to have the Amazonian River at this time. And we also have here in the south of Brazil, amazing canyons that form during this split, during the breakup of Brazil and Africa. And well, all the rivers got different kinds and shapes, also guided by these tectonic forces. They act different in each part of the lowlands, so we have a lot of shapes of rivers. Some of them got a lot of curves, some of them, this is the Amazon River, is really step forward. During this time, we also formed the Brazilian desert. It's not that big. Brazil is a tropical country, but we have a small desert here. It is in a state called Tocantins in Brazil, called Jalapão. It's a very nice place to visit too. And you go to the south during this breakup, amazing canyons were formed. So let's understand, I'm gonna come from north to south in Brazil, and we're gonna see how these tectonic efforts shape each part of Brazil. This country with continental dimensions, we have amazing and very big lowlands. There are some lowlands in this gray area here. Here is the Amazon River. It's a large lowland with a lot of water, of course. Here is the Borborema lowland. And here is what we call the Paraná Basin. It's a large lowland that encompass almost all the south of Brazil, a part of the central Brazil, and a part of the southeast Brazil. And of course, we're gonna see all these steep mountains, very nice. Okay, about tectonics, in tectonics term, we're gonna see geology and physical geography. Brazil is in the center of the South America plate. It's a very stable place. We have almost no earthquakes. We have no volcanoes. We still have some natural disaster. We're gonna talk about the geological hazards here. But if you check the South America plate here, we are in a very safe spot. Usually the biggest earthquakes happens when you go to the borders of the plate. Here in South America, the country that has more earthquakes is Chile, because it's all around here in the Andes with a lot of earthquakes. Here in Brazil, almost none. And the volcanism, the volcanoes, Brazil don't have any activity volcanism, but here in Andes we have. So for this part, we are in a safe place too. There is some earthquakes. Here are the earthquakes in Brazil. They are not very strong. Actually, they are pretty small. They could break some roofs or roof tiles. This is the most damage that an earthquake ever caused in Brazil. And it happens because the rocks, they can slide. They have these structures that can just slide a little bit. And when it happens, it just propagates a little wave, and we have these events. About geological hazard in Brazil, we have other problems because here is a tropical country and we have a lot of landslides. And landslide is a process which the rock and the soil masses, they just move downhill under the influence of the gravity and of course under the influence of these structures. And this is the main geological hazards in Brazil. We have some landslides that happens in city, mainly due to poorly constructions, or it can also happen for natural reasons, like in these high passive margins in Brazil. Sometimes we have these landslides, and it can be very dangerous. Sometimes it can be very dangerous. In central Brazil, we have wonderful canyons, but it's kind of dangerous place because, you know, these blocks, you see this wall here, this wall here. Well, there are a lot of blocks that they are a little loose and they can tilt and they may fall. Unfortunately, it happens in Brazil, and it was a tough accident. It was a geological hazard. This catastrophe happens last year. A large block fall down, and you see it smashed the boats and the people that are there. So in Brazil, we have a little bit of geological hazard that we have to look forward. So just be attention. So it's just the slide of blocks. About the volcanism, we don't have volcanoes here in Brazil. The youngest rocks from Brazil, they are here in the coast. They are 250,000 years. So it's, for geological times, it's a baby, okay? It's very, very young. This is the Trindade Islands, very nice. And this is São Peter, São Paulo Islands. They are the youngest from Brazil. The younger one is Trindade. It's 1,200 kilometers from Brazilian coast. They call the unreachable paradise. Here we just have a military and a scientific base, nothing else. Okay, it's very beautiful place, but well, it's a not touristic one. So let's see now Brazil from south to north. or from north to south, actually from north to south. Here we have the Brazilian landscape. We're gonna see the north, the green one, the central, here the yellow, the northeast, southeast, and south. This is the political division of Brazil. And to see all of this, it's very important that we understand the climate and the vegetation. They are linked, of course they are linked. Here we have the equatorial climate. It's a lot of rain all the time. Then we have the tropical climate. It's in the middle of Brazil. And here in the south, it's, well, it's a weather that is almost like the European one. And how the climate interfere directly in the vegetation. We have the tropical rainforest around here. I'm gonna talk about the devastation in a little bit. And then we have what we call cerrado. It's like a savanna. And then we have here a very dry, it's a caatinga. And then we have the tropical in the coast of Brazil. Here in the south, the grasslands of the Pampas. Okay, so let's start to see Brazil from the north. The north is where we have the tropical rainforest with the equatorial climate. It's extremely big. It's extremely big. It's 45% of Brazilian area. It's almost 4 million square kilometers in area. It's very, very big. Is where we have the Amazonian lowland. And actually we have just a little bit of mountains. This is the Guianas Plateau. It's around here. A lot of this is in Venezuela and here part in Brazil. And when you see from space, this is the most common vision. It's always hot. It's very wet. It's always raining. It's rain almost, I can't say it's raining every day because it's rain all day long. You know, it just don't stop raining anytime. And is where we have the biggest river from Brazil and the biggest river from the world. And okay, this is the Amazonian River. It's very beautiful, it's very famous. When you see the hydrographic basin of the Amazonian River, it encompasses around 40% of South America. It's around 400 billion trees and created 1/50 of Earth oxygen. Every day, this river recycle its water. 1/50 of this water go to the Atlantic every single day. This huge amount of mass, it's distort the gravitational field. It's very nice because it's a lot of water every day. And it changes during the wet and the rainy seasons. So this last one, you can see low gravity and high gravity. This is from the PBS channel. You can see from August to December, we have the dry season. So we have a low gravity. And then when we go to the rainy season, you have a huge mass of water. It changes the gravitational field. Very nice. So something interesting, from space, you almost never have a clear view from the Amazon River. It always have a lot of clouds. That's because 400 billion trees release a lot of water in the air during the photosynthesis. And the Amazon trees are huge. One single tree can release around 1,000 liters of water in one day, 1,000 liters each day. Altogether, the Amazon forest releases around 20 trillion liters of water each day. And this is the biggest river of the world. It's not the Amazon River, but it's the Amazon floating river. It's literally a river in the sky. I recommend this video on YouTube. It's very nice with beautiful animation about the river in the sky. it's a lot of water every day in the Amazon sky. And that's a problem with the devastation, because there are a lot of cattle and agribusiness here in Brazil, and in the last 3 years, it is devastating a large mass of Amazon. And so, you know, it's not only the river. We have to look for the trees, for the river in the sky that has more water than the actual Amazonas River. About the geology, in North Brazil, we have one of the biggest and richest metallogenetic provinces of the world. It calls Carajás. It was discovered in the 60s for iron. This is the researcher. It's Breno dos Santos. And well, in the 60s, it starts with iron, and then we found manganese, gold. After the iron, during the 80s, we have a big gold fever there. And we have this called Serra Pelada. The translation is like naked mountain. And lots of people went there because they heard about like the El Dorado on Earth, you know, and they start to go there looking for instant richness. And these pictures where you can see people trying to find gold in the naked mountain, well, this is from the 80s. You know, it's not a long time ago. Look, this one, it's really hard, and we didn't have a lot of legislation at that time, and people found lots and lots of gold. And well, everyone went there looking for instant richness, of course. Nowadays, it's regularized, and it still produces a lot of gold, but the main products there in the north today, in Carajás, are mainly iron. Also, we have nickel and copper. So in the central of Brazil, we are going now from north to south, gonna be here, central, then northeast, southeast, and south. Here we have the capital. Brazilian capital is pretty young. It's from April in the 60s. So, well, 62 years old. It's very, very young. Here we have a large lowland in central Brazil. It's called the Pantanal lowland. And we have the same problem of Amazon. There are a lot of devastation for cattle and agribusiness, mainly in the last 3 years, lots and lots of square kilometers just devastated. And well, here we have the largest soy plantations of Brazil. Just to give an idea of space, Brazil is the largest world producer in soybeans, only behind the US. It's around 304,000 square kilometers just for soybeans. You know, it produces more than 100 million tons each year. So just to give an idea, the soy plantation is so big that only for soy here in Brazil, there is an area bigger than the size of Germany. Only for soy. It's a lot of space. It was a lot of devastation just for soybeans, just for one culture. So now we are going to my favorite place in Brazil, that is the Northeast. The Northeast is this blue area here. This is where happens the beginning of the European colonization during the 15th century. And well, we have a large diversity here. We have this called the Caatinga. This is the Borborema lowland. It's around here. And we have 3 kinds of vegetation: the Caatinga, the tropical rainforest, and we have the Cerrado here, countryside. So in the Borborema lowland, there is the Caatinga. It's very, very dry, and there are a lot of poverty here. It's dry and extremely hot. If you check, we are here in this red here with the number 2. And when you go to the coast, you start to get more rainy. It's more comfortable, and you have the most beautiful beaches from Brazil. It's just an amazing coastline. But here in the countryside, we have a lot of migration to the southeast from Brazil. They are, of course, they are looking for better life conditions. And well, it's very contrast. It's a big contrast because when you go to the coast, we have hot water, the ideal weather. You have the best beach from Brazil. You have this one. This is amazing. This is an island called Fernando de Noronha. Beautiful, beautiful island. It already won, like, I think 5 times the most beautiful beach of the world. It's a paradise on earth here. Came to Brazil, go to Fernando de Noronha, you will not regret, with a great infrastructure. So in the coast of the Northeast, you have a great life quality, actually. About the geology, we have gemstones. Actually, this called the Paraíba tourmaline. This was during the last 90s, the most expensive gemstone of the world. It's very beautiful, very nice, and it came mainly from here, from a state called Paraíba. And now we get to the southeast. It's the most developed. It's around 5% of Brazilian GDP. And there are a lot of people here. This is a picture from Rio de Janeiro. We have Rio de Janeiro here. We have São Paulo here. Espírito Santo in the coast, and this big one is Minas Gerais. Minas Gerais itself is almost the size of France, just to have an idea. So here we have a little lowland, and if you go just a little bit countryside, you have this amazing mountain range. This is what we call Serra do Mar. Is like the sea mountain range. And if you go a little bit countryside, you have another big mountain range. It's the Mantiqueira mountain range. Sometimes it can almost snow here. It's very cold because it's very high. So at this time of year, the temperature there is around 4 degrees to 0 degrees Celsius. And of course, here in the southeast, we have this amazing city that is Belo Horizonte. Here is a picture of the Pampulha Lake. Here is the stadium. It became very famous after Brazil lost to Germany from 7-1. And here in this forest, around the stadium, we have UFMG. Look at this mountain range here. This called Serra do Curral. It's a wonderful, wonderful mountain. We can see here it connects with another mountain range, and it's very beautiful. And there is one thing, it's made of iron. All this mountain range here, all this mountain range here is made of pure iron. Another thing, when you go around here in the border of the mountain range, you have a lot of gold deposits. So you remember that I said that some mineral resources, the gold guided the Brazilian occupation. Well, this was the first time our resources guided the Brazilian occupation, you know, because you start in the coastline and you go, they went searching for the gold during the 17th century. We call Minas Gerais has a heart of gold and a chest of iron. There are a lot of deposits of gold, iron, copper here, mainly gold and iron. We still have a lot of mines for gold. Most of them are underground. And, well, you remember I talked about the Serra do Curral in the end of Belo Horizonte. This is Serra do Curral. It's not only gold, we have a lot of iron. This is Belo Horizonte. This one, it used to dig for gold, for iron, sorry. It's not activated anymore because now this landscape cannot be touched anymore. It's a good thing. Well, there is a big problem because all this iron exploration, it releases a lot of waste, and there is these big dams, and we suffer in the last decades with the rupture. This happens, this is very shocking. Was a dam just fall down. It was a catastrophic event. Around 200, more than 200 people died here because you can see the workers were here. This was a big crime against humanity, a big crime against the environment, the biggest crime against the environment in Brazilian history. It kills not only people, it pollutes the rivers, it killed the fish and all the flora and fauna in these rivers. And, well, it's now it looks like a war here. It happens more than 5 years ago and is still a catastrophic scenario. It happens 2 times here in Minas Gerais. The 2 times were in Minas Gerais, one in Brumadinho, a town named Brumadinho, the other one in a town named Mariana. They are both close to Belo Horizonte. In Belo Horizonte, we don't have this kind of hazard. It just can't affect Belo Horizonte the way these dams are distributed. There is no way they come to Belo Horizonte, but unfortunately, it happens in Mariana and Brumadinho. It destroyed one village. Fortunately, the people from the village was removed before. So here, no one dies when it happens, the rupture. But, well, here is Mariana. We have a long way to the ocean, a lot of big cities in this way, and you just polluted the river all across this way. You just end the fishes in these places all around. It killed the flora and fauna where it came, because it was a lot of mud. And, well, the fishes and all the flora and the fauna, they just die because you just drop a lot of mud in the rivers. And, okay, this happens in 2015, and then in 2019, in Brumadinho, it happens again. This was the video that I showed earlier. This is the rupture of the dam. And, well, here in Brumadinho, it's pretty close to Belo Horizonte. When you go there, it really still, it looks like a war scenario. It destroys a lot of things because it's a large volume of mud that you just drop. And this is what it looks like nowadays. It was 3 years ago, and you can still see the mud places like this. Well, about the geology is not only bad stuff. Of course, we depend on the iron exploration, unfortunately, and we also have a lot of beautiful gemstones in Minas Gerais. It was the second place for ornamental gemstones in Brazil. The first one is in Northeast, but here there are lots and lots of gemstones, and not only gemstones, ornamental rocks. Espírito Santo is the main pole of ornamental rocks in Brazil. All of these in the southeast. Also about geology, Also in the southeast, we have this big coast. The southeast start here and end here. São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Espírito Santo. Minas Gerais is here, UFMG is around here. Here you can see the ocean, the coastline. We have this light blue and the dark blue. In the division line of the light and the dark blue, we have the deposits of oil and gas. This is what we call the slope zone. Here we call the platform, and here we call the slope zone. Here we form the oil and gas deposits. Okay, so what we have here, if you just cut the earth, you're gonna see around 200 meters of sea, then a little layer of sediments with oil, a large layer of salt, around 200 meters of salt, 2 kilometers of salt. Then we have another sediments, what we call the pre-salt. The pre-salt was a big discovery in Brazil. They are extremely big deposits with excellent oil. It's a low viscosity oil, it's a light oil. So we used to dig in the 80s, like 41,000 barrels of oil each day. With the pre-salt, it's more than 10 times, 500,000 barrels each day. It's a lot of good oil. And well, it's good for Brazilian GDP. There are a lot of exploration with Petrobras here. Finally, the south is the smallest one, is smaller than Minas Gerais, actually, in area. And this is the only place where we have temperate climate, the only place in Brazil that snow. I don't think snow in Brazil is a good idea because we make catastrophic snowmen. It's not very good, but it registers negative temperatures. This is the biggest winter from Brazil. So if you are from, I don't know, Canada, you're gonna look for this and say, oh, it's almost summer, only 7 degrees negative. But this is the lowest temperature that we have here. Well, about the geology, we have a large basin in South Brazil that is very nice. You remember that I talked in the beginning about how the continents merge together and then split. Well, thanks to the South, we can check the reconstruction because the south of Brazil were directly linked to Namibia. And there we can see perfectly the fossils linked together in an amazing way. And what do we have in Brazilian South? We have in Central Namibia, we have in Antarctica, we have in Australia, we have in India. It was very nice for comparative geology. We have paleontology, is the same rocks and the same tectonics and the same climate. We know the same climate because the kind of rock you create is according to the climate. If you are in a temperate climate or if you are in a tropical climate, you can put more or less carbon material in your rocks. So we can check everything thanks to this big lowlands that we have in the south. Also during the Atlantic opening, we formed the Meridional Plateau, the Paraná Plateau. It's very large with amazing canyons and waterfalls. Very, very beautiful. This one is in Brazilian South. You can go visit there. It's a very beautiful place to go. It's very nice, but you just can't get under the waterfall because it's a lot of water, of course. So this was Brazilian geology and geography. Of course, it was just a little bit. It was just 1 hour lecture. I'd like to thank you very much for the invitation, for the time and the attention, and I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Tiago. It was a great lecture, very, very immersive. We really enjoyed the lecture, and the images really helps. I think we can start with some questions, right, Luciana? I will start with a question from Amanda Cruz. She's a student at UFMG. And she says, Professor, you said that the breakup between Africa and South America built our geology. Other parts of the world also suffered with the breakup too. There is a difference during the Brazilian breakup in the formation of our geology in comparison with other parts of the world.
Yeah, there are a lot of difference actually, because each place has a different kind of breakup and construction. You can say that each origin is unique. Each part of the world is unique. So when we have this breakup, let me put just here. When we have the breakup of, Africa going one side and America go other side, we generate our beaches, and this is what we call a high passive margin. And this is the kind of thing that you can create landslides. So that's what shaped the Brazilian landscape. When you go to the north, like here in the coast of the US, it's a completely different landscape. You go there, you have steep mountains almost in the beaches. So it's a completely different scenario. When you go like to New Zealand, it's also different because it's a different tectonic setting. So there are a lot of small pieces of blocks that you go with the lithosphere, how thick the lithosphere is. You go the climate during that time, and you go to all the tectonic forces involved. It actually, I have a full course about only the tectonics. It's a little long to talk here because it's 40 lectures actually. So, but of course I can provide the link here. But what happens is the tectonic forces, the thick of the lithosphere, and the climate during the breakup. This is the main guide to shape each coastline. So each part of the Earth is unique. You almost don't have any repetition.
Excellent. Professor, I'm going to ask you something that's of my concern, because what I learned at school is that what we have here in Minas Gerais are not mountains, but actually hills like Mar de Morro, because of the type of rock it's made of. Is that correct? Still,
Yeah.
Because sometimes you change things, like Pluto's not a planet anymore.
Yeah, because we have two definitions of mountains. When you call the mountain stricto sensu, you can call the orogenesis. Orogenesis is the generation of the oros that is mountain. And sometimes people say that you can only call a mountain if it is building by a tectonic force. So in Brazil, here, just to be clear, in Brazil, we won't have any mountain because we are in the middle of the South America plate. So here we don't have any tectonic force. I will put just a simple map. So here we don't have any tectonic force shaping the mountains. There is another definition that if you have more than 300 meters from the bottom to the top, you can call a mountain. So in this scenario, Brazil has a lot of mountains because there are some places that you have more than 2,000 meters from the bottom to the top. So it depends in which concept you fit.
I like calling it a mountain. But I also like the sea of hills, right? It's such a nice, such poetic way of describing it, right? Okay, so we have Quasinabas from Lahore University of Management Sciences in Pakistan.
Okay.
The question is, Professor, could you also tell us the effects of climate change that Brazil is facing? The topography of Brazil is diverse and it has a rich biodiversity. I'm sure it's facing some consequences due to climate change.
Yeah, it is. And there is a big effect in the biggest city from Brazil. When you come to the southeast, you have here in the southeast, you have the most large cities in Brazil. You have here Minas Gerais, Belo Horizonte with more than 2 million people, São Paulo with more than 10 million people. I don't know exactly how many people live there. And the climate change in São Paulo, well, during the 80s, São Paulo used to call Terra da Garoa. Garoa, the translation is like a soft rain, because every day it used to be a soft rain in the afternoon in São Paulo. Well, this is the largest city in Brazil. It creates its own climate, and nowadays we don't have it anymore. You only have very local storms because the climate already changed. And like in 40 years, it's not a long time. And now it happens that when it rains, to create a soft rain, you have just to go cooling the water very calm way. But nowadays it's extremely hot there because there are a lot of industry, a lot of carbon dioxide, and it's very hot. And then when you start the fluvial cycle, you don't have the time to make a soft rain. You just make a thunderstorm. And this is very harsh because when you go in a city that can afford it, you have a lot of floods, So this is one of the consequences that we can already see from the climate change in the big cities. Of course, there are a lot of other things that happens that it's not only in São Paulo. If you check the coastline in Brazil, we destroy a lot of the flora there, and that what keeps the coastline in this shape. So there are some towns here, like in Espírito Santo. It's pretty close to Minas Gerais. If you check out, you already destroy the first roads because we alterate the climate there, not only the climate, but the flora and the fauna. And now we have the ocean already come in and like destroying these things that were constructed around the 80s. So yes, we can see the impacts of the climate change. It's already happening in Brazil, but well, I have no doubt that it will be much worse because we are dealing now with some catastrophic situation. Because one of the things that keep the climate in Brazil very wet and cool was the Amazon, the tropical rainforest, and here the forest that we have in Central West. And we are just destroying this for cattle and soy. So we don't have a lot of water cycles here anymore. And well, the tendency is you start to destroy the forest here and start a desertification process around here in the middle of Brazil. This is the tendency in the long term, but the long term is like 5 decades. It's not a very large term. It's something that we will see if we don't act. So Brazil used to have one of the best programs to check this kind of devastation. and it was by an institute called INPE. Unfortunately, the director of the INPE was fired by, well, I don't agree by the reason, okay, but I will not get in the politics here. And there are, it happens a large cut in the resources for scientific and for investigation in Brazil. So the last 3 years for the Amazon rainforest wasn't very good. I hope it get better. I hope that it back the investment. I hope we can show this change, people see this change, and actually it starts to do something about it, you know, because we are telling it's bad, and now we are already seeing the first effects of this devastation.
Thank you, Professor Tiago. Now we have a question from Racheli Sbabo from University of Bologna in Italy. And they're asking if Brazil has so much oil and gas of high quality in the coast, why is Brazil buying oil from other countries like Bolivia?
Yeah, this is more an economic issue. We have more than enough oil for all of Brazil, and we can sell oil. This I don't really understand. This is an economic issue. The part of finding the oil and explore the oil, we can do it, and we are already doing it, and with a perfect way. You know, there is a company in Brazil, it's called Petrobras. It's an amazing technology, you know, because we are drilling the oil 11 kilometers deep. It's very hard. So I don't know, it's a good question for Brazilian economy. I really don't know why. We have more than enough oil to provide to the whole Brazil, to full Brazil, and we can still sell it. So I really don't know this answer. I'm sorry.
Yes, I am too, Professor. I'm very sorry, right? Yes, it's such a complicated issue. I mean, it's been rough past like 6 years, right?
Right.
So Marcela from UFMG. Professor, how do you evaluate the last 3 governments on their efforts towards Amazonia? And
Well, we have the 3, not the 3 years, but the 3 governments.
yeah, the past. How did it change?
Yeah.
I think she wants to know
Yeah,
how the past 3 governments.
Yeah, this is very interesting, and we have to go just a little bit back because we have nowadays Bolsonaro, then we have Temer, then we have Dilma, and then we have Lula, and then Fernando Henrique. With Lula, we have 1 year that happens a big devastation in the Amazon, a very large devastation in the Amazon, and then all the scientific community. That's like when INPE, this institute that checks for this kind of devastation, starts to grow, you know, because they just check, okay, there is a lot of devastation, we have to stop it. And around 2004, we start to investigate. And, you know, we have a first-class program in this institute. You know, it's world famous because it's by satellite. You can see where it is devastation, you can locate, and you can just end it. And it starts around 2004, and it just get a great improvement until 2015. A very excellent. You can see the graphics. You know, the devastation in Amazon just went downhill. You can see perfectly. It mainly because of INPE. Mainly because of this, because we know where to search. And then it keeps almost the same way during Dilma was the best one, no doubt. Dilma was the one that invested more, and it keeps almost the same during Temer. And then in the last 3 years, it just starts to rise again. And it's, because when it goes down, you start to check, it's very hard to decline. But then the devastation just went up in the last 3 years, like we never saw before. So if you check during 2004, around 2004 to 2005, we just have a big decline until 2015, and it keeps in 2015 until 2018. And then it just started devastation. Like 2018, not very large, but 2019 and 20, it was catastrophic. And 21 and 22, unfortunately. And it was not only in the Amazon rainforest, it was actually in Pantanal lowlands. It was very, 2021, I think, was the worst year of all. Well, I hope INPE can come back, and then we can not drop very low, but just drop it. We have to do something just to keep it. It can't, it's gonna be a point that will not turn back anymore, and we are almost reaching that point.
Yeah, that's sad, right? I just want to go back a little bit towards the theme of the climate change, because there are discussions. Now, of course, there are people that just say it's not happening, right? But I think there's an important discussion, in my opinion, that is climate change related to the humans on Earth, or it's an Earth event of itself? Like we've had, the Earth has been through other climate changes before, the ice era, and the like. So how much is it really related to the human effect on the environment?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Well, we have now two things. The first one, the climate in the Earth changed a lot, but we have to remember the geological time and the biological time. When you have geological time, we are talking about millions of years. And the biological time, it's like 100 years. So it's very common, and you can see, here I put this picture because you can see a lot of strata here, a lot of layers. And sometimes the change of color in the layers reflect the climate change. But it happens in at least 10,000 to 100,000 years. So it's not what we are seeing today. So what Earth usually takes like 100,000 years, we are doing in 10 years. So of course, the climate can change in natural causes when you have big eruptions. Here in Brazil, what shapes here? It was a big eruption. These are volcanic rocks from around 100 million years old. So after this, the climate changed, of course, but it was like an eruption that lasts for more than 1 million years. It was a lot of time, a lot of lava. And when you have eruption, you have a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So it gets hot, and it can happen the other way around. You can just go creating what we call the snowball Earth. It happens already, and we have registers of this all around the world, including here in Minas Gerais. The big difference is the time scale. What we are doing to the Earth climate in like 40 years, 4 decades, Earth will take like at least 100,000 years to, okay? Então, oh, sorry. So there is this change in climate for natural causes, of course, but it's not that fast. And we don't know how the climate will react in, you know, in the next 4 decades. We really don't. We don't have an idea. Probably we're gonna start first what is already happening in São Paulo, with where you just have soft rains start big thunderstorms, big storms, tropical storms that it's not usual to happen. Then you can create some tornadoes and so on, and then the sea level gonna rise a little bit. The sea level changed a lot during the years, during the Earth history. Well, here in Minas Gerais, around 300 to 400 million years ago, so it's a little long, it was an ocean, because you have large mountains all around, and here is like the Mediterranean Sea here in Minas Gerais. So the ocean rises a little bit, but well, it's not that fast. You know, the geological time, it's another scale. And
even here in Belo Horizonte, right? Belo Horizonte, I remember my grandmother, which means last generation, right? She says it was a lot colder here than it is now. So
yeah,
this what, 40 years, 50 years?
Well, here, if you check, it's a very local weather, because if you go like here, we are in, I will put a picture from Belo, because here is Belo Horizonte, and here is very hot. And if you go in the back of Serra do Curral, it's other climate already. If you check, you just go, there is a road that go to these buildings around here. When you just are crossing the Serra do Curral, you can feel the change. You know, it's like 4 degrees in the temperature. And you can see in Belo, well, people used to say we have already this is statistical, but what happens is you have the climate and the weather. And the climate, it's very slow changing. And the weather, it goes like this, go up and down, following it. So maybe we can have like colder summers in the next 5 years, but we also can have more hotter than ever, you know, because the temperature is rising, global speaking, you know.
Thank you, Professor. We have another question from a student. His name is Jose Ramil. He's from the University of Philippines. And he's asking, Professor, it seems that the southern parts of Brazil are more developed economically than its northern counterparts. Does geography comes into play to this observation?
Sorry, the last part?
He says that the southern parts of Brazil are more economically developed than the northern southern parts. And he's asking if geography comes into play to this observation.
Yeah. And well, it was all guided by the Brazilian occupation at the first place. You know, I will put just one brief picture, because I always like to show maps. I think we can have a clear view. Well, here we can check like Brazil at night, and you can see the southeast here and the south here. The main developed region is the southeast, because when you see the occupation at first time during colonial times, you have mainly in the northeast. And during this time, you saw Brazilian history, you're gonna see about the economy. It's mainly cattle and coffee and sugarcane. And then they discovered Rio and São Paulo here. They came to Rio and São Paulo. I don't know if discover is the right word. And they came to Rio and São Paulo. And well, this is in the 15th century. And 200 years later, they found the gold during the 17th century. And this guided the occupation. And where you have the first big cities, it was Ouro Preto, São João del Rei, some cities here in Minas Gerais, they found a lot of gold, a lot of gold. You have the big cities during the 17th century, and a lot of people going there looking for the gold. So during the time you have more people here, you start to develop more the urbanization here. And actually it's right, when you have the Southeast, you have a large portion of the GDP, like more than half, 55% of Brazilian GDP is from the Southeast. And it is correlated because you have the large mass of population here during the 17th century, and it's just grow and grow and grow. And now we have São Paulo that used to be just a place where you deliver the gold, where you get the gold, where you deliver people. Now it's the biggest place from Brazil, the biggest city in Brazil. The same thing from Rio de Janeiro, it's very large. And the development starts in the 17th century and it just rise on and on. So, of course, here, mainly in the Southeast, it is the economic center in Brazil, is the most economic region in Brazil. In the South, you also have a little bit of this, but mainly in the Southeast of Brazil.
Perfect. Well, we're approaching the end of our session today, and I would like to thank Professor Tiago very much for such an insightful and so illustrative session. We feel honored to have you with us and being part of the summer school for such a long time, right?
Yeah.
You've been with us for quite a while now. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation once again. And just reminding everybody of our session of this afternoon. We have like a full week this week. Professor Casarões will be here with us talking about politics. And we have also our Portuguese session right at 11:30, right, Marcos?
That's right, Luciana. We have the Portuguese for Foreigners classes at 11:30. The special session at 2 p.m. And I would just like to remind everybody to also watch the movie for the movie discussion that we're going to have tomorrow. The movie, The Last Forest.
The Last
Última
Forest.
Floresta. Yes.
Perfect. Let's open our do you want to say something, Professor?
No,
So
thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor. I like very much this event. Thank you.
Yeah, we
very
do too. Thank you. Now let's open our cameras so that we can take a picture. And I can see your faces as well. Oh, how are you? I can see everybody now. Hello, everyone. How nice. Will you take the picture, Hiki? Good. Okay, guys, I'll see you in a while. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Professor.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.